All right, so it turns out African-American people are being disproportionately affected by the novel coronavirus. According to the CDC, 33% of people hospitalized with COVID-19 are black, but black people only make up 18% of the American population. So why is that? Joining us to break it down for us, Ajamu Baraka. He's the national organizer with the Black Alliance for Peace. Ajamu, thank you for being with us. So the numbers show that poor areas in places like New York City or majority black cities like Detroit are being hit the hardest. Is there any explanation for this phenomenon?
Of course, it's poverty. It's the fact that for the last 40 years, it's been in the African-American working class and poor communities where neoliberal policies have resulted in clinics and hospitals being closed, where toxic waste dumps have been sited, where petroleum and industrial facilities have been placed. And as a consequence, African Americans are vulnerable to this kind of pandemic because we're the ones that have disproportionate rates of diabetes, of hypertension, all of the diseases that come from structural racism. So, this so-called discovery on the part of white America that black people are particularly vulnerable to this pandemic is really unimpressive.
And Ajamu, you brought up some of these underlying conditions, such as hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, that could make people, especially the African-American community, more vulnerable to this virus. So besides treating the folks who have coronavirus, what needs to be done to change the circumstances that created those underlying conditions in the first place?
We can get rid of the economic system that created those conditions. We can get rid of structural racism. But of course, that takes a radical change in the U.S., something that both Republicans and Democrats have been very much opposed to. So what we have with this pandemic is an exposure of these underlying structural contradictions that have resulted in real death for black people, but also for other poor and working class people in this country. Black people are suffering disproportionately, but also our white folks who live in rural areas, also the Latino workers. This is both a race and a class issue that has really exposed the failures of an economic system that has created these kinds of conditions that result in people losing their lives unnecessarily.
Now, speaking of that, the working class, obviously a lot of black people fill these essential job roles right now, and they're being impacted by this. They are at the Amazon facilities, they're at the grocery stores, they're getting sick with coronavirus. So how do you see this impacting the economy overall when they get sick?
Look, this whole phony narrative about these heroes, these essential workers sacrificing. Of course, they are sacrificing, but they have no other choice. These are workers who have to go to work every day. The experts say that there should be mitigation to deal with this virus, social distancing. But how do you have mitigation when you have to travel on public transportation packed in like sardines even today? So, this is the objective situation that poor people, that working class people face here in this country, and that if people are really serious about addressing these issues, then let's do certain things like, for example, expanding Medicare for all. Millions of people are losing their health care, their employer base. What happens to them? We saw the lines of people lining up for food. These structural contradictions of an economic system that's unable to address the objective human rights needs of the masses of the people in this country.
And real quickly and lastly, Ajamu, we see that obviously black folks are being hospitalized at a disproportionate rate. They're dying at disproportionate rates because of these pre-existing conditions. How would you call attention to this to the world, to people that wouldn't ordinarily care or bother to think of it at this perspective?
The people of the world are seeing the contradictions. These are all the failures of this economic system. And we say that it makes no sense people talk about Black Lives Matter. It's quite obvious they don't matter in the U.S. And people have seen that with their own eyes.
All right, Ajamu, Baraka, always appreciate your time and insight on this. Thank you.